We're already at the last talk. Just a reminder, there will be closing notes after this, but this is our last speaker for today. Very exciting speaker. I'm very excited to announce Maarten. He is a man of many things. He is a PhD researcher at the University of Amsterdam, where he works on multimodal machine learning models. He is author of a book that was published this year, called The AI Revolutie, a Dutch book, where he explores the societal impacts of AI. And recently he also launched the AI Factory, of which he will tell more also in this talk. In today's talk, he will bring us along in his journey through the creation of Jounai, an AI-driven news platform. Join me in welcoming Maarten Sukel.
Thank you. And fun fact, Sharon here used to be my tech lead. So also, I think she's doing great today. Big applause, please. Yes. So indeed, well, you basically gave my first slide away. My name is Maarten Sukel. I'm a machine learning engineer and indeed a PhD researcher at the University of Amsterdam, finishing in 2 months. So I'm finally can say I'm done with that. And founder of the AI Factory. Actually, today's talk is not about the AI Factory, but a quick advertisement. If you need any help with full-stack AI product development, tackling ML scaling bottlenecks, or basically need an ML engineer for hire, you can always contact me. But today is not about that. Today is basically about doing side projects and learning while doing that. So this is an image which is from the internet, but imagine it's from earlier this summer. I was with some other engineers sitting next to a campfire, and we were thinking, we should build something together for fun and to learn. So this is us. Well, 2 of them have been slightly anonymized. They are real, I promise. And one of them is a person with a Java background. One of them is a bit more, I would say, full stack. And then it's me, ML engineer. And we figured, what is like a problem in our lives, or at least what seems like a problem in our lives that we can tackle? And all of us really like watching and scrolling through news. But there's so many news sources that often we get confused with, what is the truth? What is actually interesting for us to see? And that seems like a problem from the 90s, right? Having to go to different websites to find information. And then I was thinking, but we live in the time where we have 5-legged generated full HD puppies. Can't we use that technology to actually, well, solve that problem? And at the same time, we were thinking, we should still keep playing, even though we're adults, even though we're professionals. We should play with new technology in order to learn. So that's why we came up with creating Jounai, and that's also what I will be talking about today, and it's playing with new tech to reinvent the news. So, what's going to come in this presentation? I realize now this looks a lot like pâté in terms of branding, but that's, I guess, the big screen as well. So I'll be talking about what is Jounai, the tech stack behind it, running everything on Azure. I was accustomed to AWS, so that was new for me. Why the platform hallucinated world peace? More about that later. And afterwards, that's very related, the structured LLM output validation and why you need it. The total operational cost of it all. Also be doing a quick quiz about it to see who can assess this in a good way. And the trends you see for using completion model APIs and how much it costs. Also, building the backend in Java. Talking about that at PyData, I understand that's not the right venue, but maybe it's interesting. And speech generation tools and comparing those. So what is this news platform? It's already live. It's basically real-time generated news about all sorts of topics. We have, well, big economical news. We have news about political events, anything, sports, anything you would find on a news website. We also have horoscopes. And fun fact, the horoscopes are the only one that are always fully hallucinated. We did try to plug in an API with the position of the moon, but then realized that didn't really make that much effect. Please tell me if I'm wrong about this. I have to say it has excellent summaries and categories. Nice thing about when you set up a platform without any humans intervening with us, you can decide what is the input, and you don't have any human input, which makes your data quality a lot better. The images are not anymore or not yet generated, and I will explain why that is in a bit as well. Clearly written, neutral, and objective. That's really the goal. We want to have text It's in Dutch still, unfortunately, only. Maybe something we'll fix in the future. But we want it to be truthful as well and to be easy to read. And yeah, clickable text. So if there's news about a certain person, you can click on this person and you will find more information about them as well. And of course, a simple recommender system to find, basically keep users on the website as well. So the news is coming from about 50 public trusted sources. We really build on top of them. And here's a picture of a hammer. I will explain. Often when you think about AI in the news, it's not the most, best combination. You have disinformation, you have fake news, you have bots, and things like this. But we're thinking about technology as a hammer. So you can use it to break down a wall, but also to build a wall. So we figured, can't we use the tech to actually make something that's more truthful? And that's what Jounai is. But what is a Jounai? The little puppet you see here, that's actually what we call a Jounai. So one is writing book reviews, one is writing movie reviews. It's mostly something in the interface. In the backend, it doesn't really do that much. We have one Jounai that is responsible for daily summaries, one that writes about the climate the whole day. And I wonder who recognized these images. Is there anybody that's like, hey, I know this from somewhere? It's a certain book from 2019 from O'Reilly. Nobody knows them. A full room of data scientists. These are called Rotlers. And back in 2019, they were used to explain generative AI. Back then, the best models were still GANs. Didn't really work that well yet. I guess that's why nobody really knows it anymore. But we use those as inspiration for these little avatars. But now into the technical side of it instead of the marketing story. Basically, the tech stack consists out of a backend, a front end, and an AI engine. Nothing very surprising. Since it was a side project, we didn't really have any infrastructure at all. So what we did was set up GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions does some testing, creates the Docker, and sends it to Azure to a container registry. Extremely nice to work with, very easy to set up, by the way. Basically, we used Azure Container Apps, which means the moment there is a new container in this registry, it will just pull it and deploy it, most of the times. Easy to set up. You don't need to touch anything related to Kubernetes or whatever. It also scales very well. It was also fast to set up, which is also nice. However, we can also see that if we're going to scale this up, the price is probably going to scale up as well. Currently, we don't have that much users yet. There's more people here in the room than ever visit the website, so we're still good. But we do see this price is going to increase rapidly. And also, there's a lot of functionality that doesn't really work. For example, if you put in the UI, you say, I want to automatically deploy, you say yes, and then it doesn't work. It's really quite hard to debug when using this service. So for the backend, we use Java, mostly to learn something new. We made everything in a framework called Spring Boot. Basically, there's a bit more endpoints, but 3 functionalities: storing the news, storing the generated news, and serving the front end. So very simple backend. Very performant to work with. It's extremely fast once we got it working. It's a very big ecosystem. I would say it's competing with the Python ecosystem, but it's different. It's like a lot of tools and compatible frameworks that don't exist in the Python universe. Quite a steep learning curve, especially if you're used to writing things in Python. I guess that doesn't really help. But it's also what you see more people say working with this type of tooling has a steep learning curve. And it's quite resource heavy. One of our nodes needs about 2 gigabytes of memory to run, which I would say if you compare it with something like Fast API, that's a lot more than I'm accustomed to. Probably also there, being used to working in Python doesn't really help with optimizing things. But I can really recommend sometimes building things in a completely different language, because difficult paths lead to beautiful destinations. Not in this image, by the way, because it doesn't lead anywhere. It's generated. But it's always nice to keep learning. And next time a Java developer is bragging on his GitHub that he has a lot more lines than you, I do think this is sort of like how much lines of Java you need to write to get the same thing working as in Python. In Java, they use a lot of pre-generated code or boilerplate code. In Python, we just import things, which I prefer a lot more, actually. Now, after bashing Java a little bit, onto front-end development. I really think front-end development looks a lot like Lego, as somebody not in that world going into that world. And why do I say that? This is the front end, by the way. You can see we're all not front enders, but work in progress. It works, just not the prettiest thing yet. But first, we made everything in Vue. And there, basically, you have these single file components where you can just put blocks together. You can import them in others. And then there was a nice lesson. We built everything in Vue.js. And then when we launched the site, we checked the SEO, and we realized, it's all client-side rendered. So SEO didn't work at all. So we migrated to Nuxt.js, which is basically a little brother of Vue.js, where you can do server-side rendering for your HTML. And again, the comparison to Lego nowadays. This is like an example from code, not the best naming convention, sorry for that. But you can like make different components. You just stick them together, and it's really like playing with Lego nowadays. So yeah, if there's any front-enders, nice. As a kid, I played with Lego. I wish it was my job now as well. But the brains of it all. Of course, this is done in Python, as you should always do. Basically, it's called the AI engine. It's a cron job. Basically, it collects from a lot of open news sources. It saves them in our database with the API. It filters things that are relevant. Currently, very simple rules, just detecting some words, no classification at all. And then, well, for finding duplicates, normally you would set up a lot of like cool clustering, things like that. But we decided to go very, very old school, and we'll tell you about that. And afterwards, we generate a podcast, we generate news articles with what I call API ML and prompting. I think a year ago, I would still consider that pseudoscience. Nowadays, it's sort of becoming more and more mainstream to actually work like that. Interesting. So for the grouping of articles, very simple Jacquard similarity. Not sure, who's familiar with the Jacquard similarity? Nice. OK, one basically means same words in a sentence. 0 means completely different, with some small details. We use that to actually filter out the titles in a part of the text to find the same. Works very well. So you can imagine a batch of news coming in. We can cluster them together like this and have the same ones. And also check back to like the last 12 hours, like is there things that are the same? So we will not write about it again if it's not overlapping enough. It has to be a certain threshold. So that's all very basic. Normally, I would put a lot more effort into it, but for a side project, it worked. And then you go to the prompting, which is a bit a weird one, because you're just typing things, and then the results become better or not. Mostly how we tackled that was very qualitative. We just adjust the prompt, and it became better or it became worse, and we kept doing that. One thing that was tricky is getting it right for the audience. So we made it for a Dutch audience. It's in Dutch as well. It doesn't really understand what is international, what is national. And that was actually quite tricky to get into these prompts. These models are, of course, trained on international data. And that's one of the things that we fixed with basically just putting in a lot of prompts. But then at one point, I was just on my phone checking the website, and I saw some very interesting news. The website said world peace has been achieved. So I was, of course, extremely happy to read that happened, but also a little bit suspicious. Because when I checked other news websites, there wasn't really any report about this at all. So I was thinking, something went wrong. So I started digging into the data just to see, like, hey, what's going wrong here? Why is there suddenly this weird hallucination happening? And then I got a message from one of the other people and said, I might know why it is. I pushed some new things which I didn't really test. The text of the news input we used was completely empty. It was none. There was an issue with the API. So the prompt was, hey, can you generate a news message in this and this style about this topic? Nothing. And the LLM did what it does. It just outputs something always. So this was more of a lesson again in, you have to basically check your data sanity and put a lot of testing in your code. Nothing new in the world of LLMs. If you put in terrible data, they will output terrible data. So for that, we used Instructor. It's a very nice package where you can force the outputs of LLMs to be structured. And you can, in a pydantic output, and you can use Pandera to check them. OpenAI right now you don't need to use Instructor anymore. They like the package so much, they now offer the functionality by themselves. And you can use Pandera validation on all the outputs and inputs, which I can really recommend. So for example, here, if you tell a model to think of a category for a text, you can validate it, which is, I think, a very easy thing to set up. So, but we also have a podcast. Since this week it's live on Spotify. Whenever there is enough relevant news, it will generate a completely new podcast, I have to say. And we tried a bunch of different speech generation models. And now I'm going to ask you to pick which one you think is better. So there's going to be a random Dutch recording. Doesn't really matter what it is about. But please listen to both, and then afterwards we're going to vote which one is better. Some quick A/B testing. We're new, so we want to collect some data here. This is the first one.
Twitter en Facebook zijn krachtige tools voor vrije meningsuiting.
So that's the first one.
Meta heeft besloten om Russische staatsmedia, waaronder de tv-zender RT en het persbureau Rossiya-Segotnia, wereldwijd te verbannen van al zijn platforms.
So, that's two. Who likes the first one better? Okay. Who likes the second one better? Happy. Okay, that's the one we use. It's slightly inspired by some old Dutch news presenters. We mixed it with some other voices to get to that. I think for Dutch people it gives a bit of nostalgic vibes. It does sound a bit weird maybe, but the old microphones work well with the sort of still fake feeling of the speech generation. So the first one you heard was made with Whisper from OpenAI. It's too American often in how it pronounces things still, which you only hear, by the way, in Dutch. 11 Labs is also what Drake prefers. It's very, very impressive what you can do. I do have to say, today I got the bill for the first month of using it. It's about 10 times as expensive, I would say, as Whisper. But of course, for Drake, it doesn't really matter, because he's very rich, I think. But of course, a lot of talk about generative AI here. And as you can see on the website, we don't use generated images. So why not? I mentioned before, like getting the culture load of it is quite tricky. So whenever it was about Dutch politics, it would show this Fever Vendetta type images in the Chamber of Parliament. I don't think this is how it looks. Even it's now in construction, it still doesn't look like this. I do get the vibe somewhere with the current political parties, but it's not how it doesn't match with the news. And when you have a news article about a dog that is missing and you force it to be Dutch, you get all the tulips and all the stereotypes and the windmills, and it just doesn't really match with a serious news website. And furthermore, I do think if you have such an automated system that's generating a lot of data, probably it's good not to mindlessly just consume energy. And it's not a complete coincidence, but now we'll be talking about the cost as well. Image generation is expensive, the APIs. Quick quiz. Who thinks running this costs more than 50 pots of peanut butter a month? Yeah? People are thinking, what type of peanut butter? The expensive one, the cheap one? Average. So who thinks it's less than 50 pots of peanut butter a month? Everything together, the APIs and okay. Interesting. So this is what we use from OpenAI. I think it's per week. You can see it's going down. That's mostly because we're switching to the smaller models. Interesting enough, the mini model, it's not even visible anymore on the graph. Currently, we're running for less than $2 a week in terms of API cost. It's not what I would have expected when this all started. I would expect they're going to get all their people in using these APIs, and at some point they're going to up the prices insanely. I guess you got competition, and that's why they can't do that yet. But overall, I would say it's getting cheaper and cheaper. The green line you see, by the way, that was the image generation. So apart from ruining the planet, it was also ruining my personal credit card a little bit. So that's not that expensive. And as I mentioned, I do think the completion API costs are going down, which is not what I expected a year ago. And when you look at the cost of Azure, it's about $80 a month currently, how much that is costing. So that's for the jobs running 8 times an hour, all the different, the database, the backend, the front end, all of that running container apps. Still quite affordable, but yeah, we're running everything on about 1 node, so we're not scaling at all yet. Probably if we get 10 times as much people visiting, this is also gonna go up. So it's the answer to the question, who said it's less than 50? Hands up. 25 a month. So good job, you were right. It's not that expensive. I was expecting Azure to be more expensive, actually. So it's about 80 euros a month. So yeah, the nice thing is that nowadays, when I'm scrolling, the news, it's actually quite nice. The website works well. So now we're back to the campfire, hopefully somewhere soon, and going to be thinking about what can we add in terms of functionality. We can launch the website in 100 different languages. We can do the podcast in 100 languages, which is all very cool. We could completely personalize it. So that's very nice. So we were also with the team discussing what else we're going to be adding. And one of the things, that's, yes, nice. So one of the things I wanted to give to you is if you don't have a greenfield project to work on, create one, because they are a really great learning experience. Often when you're working in projects in your job, you're very constrained in what you can do. You can only do it on one hosting party. You will get accustomed to it. And when you get accustomed to things, time will fly by and you will retire and you'll be thinking, what did I do with my life? So I can recommend just playing with these greenfield projects, making them up yourselves. Because playing with tech is learning new tech, and learning new tech is actually very professional. So play more with new technology. You can check it out. It's Jounai.nl. How you pronounce it, that's still something up for debate. But it's live. And I hope you will all, this summer or next summer, start your own greenfield projects and learn a lot. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Maarten, for this inspiring talk. Do we have any questions in the room?
Thanks for the presentation. It's a little bit of a generic question. Yeah, I'm sitting here. It's a little bit generic question, but I think you have thought about it. You see the price going down now for the models, but what do you think it will be within 5 years?
I really hope that the large language models will become a lot smaller again. It feels a bit like, hey, we created this gigantic architecture. It's doing what we want. It's very inefficient. And the coming years, scientists were actually working, basically cutting off parts of it, making it smaller, making something that's more controllable and more efficient. I also think bigger companies are, probably, some of them don't want this to happen. Some of them do. Apple is investing in getting everything to run locally. I think it's going to go in that direction. So they're going to get smaller, hopefully open source again, because it was a weird thing that was happening with the LLM. Suddenly it was not closed source. So it's like, hey, this is an open source world. Please keep it like that. I think it's going to go back in that direction, and hopefully sooner than later. Yeah.
Next question here.
Thanks. A question. So, for example, if you have Fox News and CNN, they write in a different tone from a different perspective. Like, how is your app working right now that it finds the mid-truth or chooses a side?
Yeah, currently we have several prompts set up that are comparing the facts in it, just extracting those. And when they overlap, we write an article about it. It's not waterproof yet. I think sometimes it will still make mistakes there, but we're iterating on it, making that better and better. But we try to get it as neutral as possible. And I was surprised with how much you can do there with prompting, actually. But it's still very qualitative, so we would love to send up more, actually evaluating these type of things more structurally. Yeah.
How are you going to make money, if ever you are?
So I mentioned you can hire me for other gigs, because this has not been very profitable. Though we really set it up as something that it was not intended to be very commercial. So we don't run ads, things like that yet. We're just going to launch this, see what people think about it, and then see where the world goes. So it was not intended to make money. No.
Any more questions? I see one at the front, and then you.
Yes, a great talk. I have a question about the cost, because I'm also trying to experiment with this, you call it greenfield projects, I think. Mm-hmm. But if you do it by yourself, 80 euros a month is still quite expensive. If you would like to do a similar project, would you have some advice on how to get the cost down?
Yes, of course. Yeah, you just try to make everything as efficient as possible, which is I do think it's fun to do, just to try to get the cost as low as possible. The big risk, of course, right now it's 80, but of course, if during your work on Friday you boot up a GPU machine and you leave it running for 3 days, that's going to be damn, that's a few thousand. If that happens on your personal account, that really sucks. That's a nice holiday. So I would really, we really check everything. We set up a lot of alerting, things like this, because I'm even more like careful than with company money, which is sort of weird, actually. But yeah, it's I would say, it does cost money to run things. So you need to have a bit. I have the luxury that I have the room to do something like this.
Would you recommend another cloud provider than Azure?
I do expect AWS is going to be cheaper. However, we did save a lot of times with having everything basically click and go on something like Azure. So it's a bit what you find most important. The nice thing is that you're not fixed to one. You can try them all and see which one works best. There's also a lot of them that offer this new, you get 200 euros free, or you get the first year free if you say you're a startup. So things like this, I would say, you can also do. But read the small letters, because often they're good at those.
Next question over here.
Thanks. So I've got a two-part question. The first part is your sources, where you source the news stories. Mm-hmm. Do you crawl the websites and scrape it, or is it like APIs that you use?
Yeah, no, it's quite tricky. Not all websites allow to use their RSS feeds, for example, for this purpose. We have like a mixture of directly getting things from RSS feeds and getting things from, for example, like from Google News. We have like services that distribute this. But it's quite tricky to see what are we allowed to take. So that's like for every, first we were like, hey, we wrote code, we can just throw in a website and it will find, basically the news. But we have to go through all of them to actually check like what is allowed, what is not. So it becomes this legal discussion. It's quite tricky actually to see what is allowed. So we're being pretty careful and only doing websites where we couldn't find anything in the conditions. But I do expect there's going to be some discussion about this. Yeah.
Okay, that was actually my second part around the legalities and whether there's you have to cite your sources or risk plagiarism claims.
We do intentionally cite all the sources. So, for example, if you have a 3-minute podcast, there's about 40 different news articles that were used to generate it, and they're all listed, which I think is just a fair way of using somebody's content. And we do only try to use the content that are actively, for example, in the robots.txt, it's allowed, things like this. We try to be on the good side, but of course it's, first time, so let's see if it went well. I hope so. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
I think we have time for one last question. Everyone is excited for the closing notes. With that, thank you, Maarten. Give him a big round of applause.